feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey, everyone, I'm Dan Whedon, and you are listening live to the Seattle Shrimp Tank podcast here on April 7th, 2021. Welcome to the show. We are going to get things kicked off right now. Yes, you are listening to the Seattle Shrimp Tank streaming live to you on Facebook. You can catch us every week on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time from our virtual studio here on Facebook. I'm Dan Whedon. Yes, I know you're expecting Brad Berger, but Brad is on vacation somewhere exotic, I'm sure. So I'm filling in for Brad. That means we brought a pinch hitter out of the dugout. Andy Vernon is filling in for Brad today. Andy, we're going to talk a little bit more in a second. Welcome back. You can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle and wherever you get your podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We are ubiquitous, so find us. Don't forget to subscribe. You can subscribe to any of those places. Rate us, give us a 5, tell us how much you love us. Because after this episode, you're going to love our guest, Michael Oskouian. Michael is a returning guest. His first appearance, holy cow, April 5th of 2017, almost to the day. We had Michael Oskouian, my colleague at First Underwriters. We're going to bring in Michael in a second, but Michael, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Hey, Andy Vernon, it's been a while, buddy. How are you?
Been a while, not as long as April 5th, 2017, but I'm doing great. We're here. We've survived a challenging year and we live to tell about it.
Absolutely. Hey, speaking of that, today, this morning, I stood in line and I got my first vaccine dose today, Andy.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. I got my first dose. I found out that we didn't have any here in Kitsap for the extras, but Mason County did. So I hightailed it down to North Mason High School, stood in line at my appointed time, and didn't take very long.
Cut off all those old people, just got to cut them right off.
Yeah, I went right to the top, but I stood in line.
Walk around from under him and get up there.
That's right, and got a Daffy Duck Band-Aid and the whole thing. So I am one down, one more to go in 3 weeks, and I'm excited about that.
I've heard that it's the second one where you might feel a little bit queasy. So the first one,
it is. Yeah. And I only know that because Barb is already done with hers, and the second one, you know what? She kind of it hurt a little bit more. It felt more the second day, so I'll be prepared for that in 3 weeks.
Yep. But she shakes it off quickly, and that's what I've heard from everybody is that the relief they feel just from getting it over with is far greater than any queasiness they feel as a result.
Absolutely. And let you know, the queasiness that business has felt over the last year, hopefully will start abating a little bit here as we're working our way back and hope so. And today, Andy, we're going to talk to Michael Oskouian about a topic that really it's been part and parcel of the pandemic, and that's insurance. So we're gonna get kind of a state of insurance from Michael. So let me tell you how I know Michael. For those who were not on the show back in 2017, Michael and I are colleagues at First Underwriters. Kathryn, his wife, is the head honcho. He is second head honcho as COO of First Underwriters. And Michael and I have known each other a long time, and we've actually been in cahoots at First Underwriters. Right. I think it was earlier in 2017, so about 4 years now. Andy, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more formally who Michael Oskouian is?
Yeah, let's talk about Michael Oskouian. He's had a 26 years of experience in insurance. He's the co-founder, and Dan, as you like to call it, the second head honcho. I'm not sure that's a term, by the way. I don't think that's a thing. You're either the head honcho or you're not. But he's right up there at the top on, in the C-suite. And he is the co-founder and chief operating officer of First Underwriters Insurance Brokers, along with his co-founder and the actual head honcho, his wife, Kathryn. They are leading client-focused producers and staff with the vision to ensure their clients receive the best risk management solutions for their business. Very topical, given what we've all now experienced over the last year. They effectively have grown First Underwriters with financial strength and operating efficiency through a respectful, constructive, and energetic environment guided by their clients' objectives. Michael has a broad experience in all aspects of commercial insurance and risk management, which concentrates mostly on auto and property risk with a focus on high-tech companies and also real estate. Michael, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank after 3 years. We are so excited to have you back.
Thank you so much, Andy. Appreciate it. It's good to be here. There's a lot
Mike,
going on. And by the way, your comment about head honchos, and aren't our wives always the head honcho regardless of where we go?
Totally. If you think I'm even close to the head, by the way, I come in like fourth after the rabbit in my house, so don't even worry.
Well, it was like my big back, what is it, big fat Greek wedding that said that, he's the head, I'm the neck.
There you go. There you
I'm
go.
not even the neck. I'm a lot further down. We don't have to get into it.
Well, Michael, whether you're a head or a hunched honcho, we're glad to have you back.
Thanks so much, Dan.
We're going to talk a little bit about First Underwriters in a few minutes, but I want to kick this show off talking a little bit about insurance in the pandemic. And certainly at some points, business interruption insurance was talked about. There's other parts and issues around insurance that had related to the pandemic. But I think we probably, for those of us who are in the business, can agree that insurance has actually been altered by the events of the last 13 months and may now only be being felt by consumers. If I were to say, Michael, give me a kind of a state of insurance, especially on the commercial side. Talk about the state of insurance as we stand here today in April 2021.
Well, from a client's perspective, I would say that clients are paying much more attention to their insurance policies than they did before.
Yep.
That is for sure. In the past, of course, people would buy the policy, park it on the shelf. They said, hey, I will use it, or I'll look at it when I have a claim, if I have a claim. And of course, we approach things differently with clients. We take the more holistic approach, and we go through the policy to ensure that it aligns with what they're actually doing. I think, to your point with what has happened in the last 13 months, I think business in general has changed for everybody. For insurance, I think it's sped up. Insurance tends to be a little bit more slow to move in any direction. So it's been really fascinating to watch some of these insurance companies to really be pushed over the cliff because they didn't want to go to this route. They don't like remote access. They don't appreciate the digital platform. They know what's out there. There's a lot of risk, and as you know, we talk about cyber quite a bit, and that's a huge problem out there.
Michael, I have to ask as you get into this, because cyber, without question, is a big deal. But I don't want to leave the pandemic just yet, because when I everything I think about when I think about First Underwriters, it's the customizable nature. And it's the way that you're able to really, give a more personalized experience. Was that helped with an event that was so stressful like this one? Did it help you kind of build relationships because you were able to listen, because everybody had to kind of pivot in an environment that was just so uncertain for a while? Did that help you?
Absolutely. Because, first, thank you, Andy, for the question. And two, you have clients in general want to have someone explain to them if they're vulnerable, is there somebody going to be there to protect me? That's really the case. With the insurance companies, you hear all of the commercials and whatnot. They say the insurance companies are out to protect their own interest. Well, for the most part, everybody is out to protect their own interest. With regard to the client, who is there to help guide them to make an informed decision? And really, throughout this pandemic, what we've done with the client is to show them exactly where the loopholes are, show them where the coverage gaps could be. And really, it's not our decision. It is our job to inform the client to make a decision. But quite frankly, to your point, Andy, when I get the phone calls from the clients or prospective clients, they say, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know that even existed. I didn't even know that was a coverage gap.
Well, and none of us knew about pandemics, right? I mean, I don't know how often your industry thought about pandemics. We didn't think about it at all. And
well, you'll laugh. Dan and I know a lot about pandemics because we've covered businesses for the ones before. The unfortunate thing is the ones before didn't shut the entire global economy, right? This shut everybody down, right?
Incredible.
Right, but the other ones in the past didn't. It were more targeted to certain areas, and it didn't shut everyone down. But I'll tell you, they were just as severe and catastrophic for those businesses that were impacted by them.
And you know, during the pandemic, business interruption got more coverage than it had probably in the 30 years prior. In fact, it's no longer called business interruption. It's called
isn't.
business income.
That's right.
But you know, when all of a sudden it starts popping up in headlines, the president's talking about it, and the Congress is talking about it, and everybody wants to know. All of a sudden, everybody became an insurance broker. They knew how it was covered. But what ended up happening is pandemics are not. You know, I'm not in a judge. What I'll say is this: pandemics were not meant. The insurance companies were not intending to pay for something like that.
Yeah.
Talk about on a different level what somebody out there listening say. Well, what does it cover? What does business interruption cover?
You can manuscript a policy to ensure that it actually falls in place where you're going to have a gap in any kind of a financial loss. You know, I love it when Dan says, you know, it's there to protect your balance sheet. And that is such a true statement, because what we do when we sit with the client is to ensure that, okay, whatever the cause is, whatever the loss is. However, if we didn't do that and you bought a policy off the shelf from somebody, and that policy says business income coverage, you have to make sure that the loss is covered. If the property loss is covered, then typically the business interruption loss will follow it. So if you've had a fire loss, then the business income will follow it. If you've had a utility claim loss, the business income would follow it. But it would have to have a covered loss in order for business interruption to follow along. It's never been intended to stay as a monoline, or what we call a standalone coverage line of business.
And you know, Michael, one of the things that you know, I tried to explain with clients, and I know you did too, is that covered cause of loss in every insurance policy, commercial property policy, it's got to be a tangible loss. It's got to be direct damage. You've got to be able to actually see it, like a fire, right?
Yeah.
Like using that as the best example.
That's
and
right.
that's where we lost the pandemic a little bit, because there wasn't that. Am I correct? I know I
100%.
am, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
No, you're absolutely correct. And I don't, frankly, as you know, I don't use the insurance terminology so much, because they're like, what does that mean? What does that mean? So
Right.
I tell them, but you're absolutely right, Dan. If there is not a cover cause of loss, and then there is no income protection whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
Andy, what do you got?
You know, we're actually going to take a short break and hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Michael Oskouian for First Underwriters, for our hot or not section of the show, we're going to ask the very question. We're going to ask Michael, hot or not, getting insurance online. So don't walk away. We're going to be right back with more of the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by IdealLife360.com. What would it be like to be in the best shape of your life, both physically and mentally, every day for the rest of your life? Have awesome relationships with the people you care about most. Never having to worry about money again. What would it be like if you received a letter out of the blue and suddenly discovered you had 20 more years to live than you ever imagined? What would you do with those extra years of your life? How many lives would you touch? What kind of legacy would you leave behind? What changes would you make today knowing you had 20 more years to live in your future? What new big changes would you take on? What would be next? Visit www.ideallife360.com or call 1-844-543-3360 to discover how to rethink, redefine, and reinvent the best years of your life.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank. I was almost sleeping there, Andy. I usually don't come on right after it. Brad does. And so I was thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to come back on after Sue. And here we are, post commercial, with our conversation with Michael Oskouian. Remember, you can catch every single one of our episodes at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Don't forget to subscribe. Catch us wherever you get your podcasts. Right now, our next segment, Andy, is hot or not.
Yep. And of course, Hot or Not is sponsored by Shrimp Peeler sponsor, our Shrimp Peeler sponsor, Port Ludlow Resort. And our question for hot or not, Michael, is of course, now that we've talked about all of this personalized experience that you provide, we've got to ask the question, hot or not, getting insurance online.
It fits for some people. I mean, if quite frankly, if they like doing things on their own, it's like going to if you feel that you can pull your own tooth and you don't need a dentist, go for it. It's like,
Right. That's a perfect comparison.
Yeah.
I do that all the time, by the way, all the time.
So it's like, but when you know the product and you just need it conveniently delivered to your door, Amazon is perfect. But when you're having your taxes done and personally, or any of the other professional services, and they're a deduction anyway, it just, to me, I think people are doing it out of convenience, but I think to a certain extent, if they don't know what they're doing, they'll probably regret it during claims time.
I think the way we put that is you'll poke your eye out. Right.
Yes.
I mean, particularly with something like this too, considering all the things we've just talked about, all of the threats online, the fact that we've just been through a global pandemic, sitting down and really kind of figuring out the real specifics of what my business faces. I mean, we've all had to kind of think about that when all of a sudden you live in a world where revenue shuts down. And again, I can't overstate how incredible that was, policy response. I couldn't believe it. But those types of things, you don't know what that looks like until all of a sudden you're there. But what you were suggesting earlier, you kind of had some sense for that. You were able to talk to clients and give them some guidance.
Well, in the old days of insurance, quite frankly, now we got to recall when people say I want the insurance online, I think they want the conveniences of the modernized insurance world, and that's really where we are. And you don't necessarily have to consult with somebody, person, one-on-one. This is an ideal way to do it. We can do it at any time with a client. We can have discussions over Zoom or over any other platform for that matter, and advise them and coach them and guide them through the policies. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the old-fashioned one-on-one, face-to-face and whatnot, although that is a way that doesn't have to be.
And Michael, to that point, on firstundwriters.com, people can come in, whether they're business insurance, entrepreneurs, small business, they have the ability to use the website. That's what you're talking about, right?
You bet. Absolutely. Because, the clients have been so frustrated for so long. They want to be able to get their quote on time. They want to be able to make an informed decision as to what is right for their business or personal life. And with that said, they want it to be empowered with the risk management expertise that we bring to the table. That's the key. The key is we get up every day, we face risks, right? And we mitigate those risks somehow. We drive a better car, right? We avoid heavier traffic roads, right? So we avoid certain things. But when it comes to financial matters and thick policies and all of this verbiage that you really don't typically read, who's there to guide you? That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what we're here for to ask you some more hot or not. And I got a hot or not for you, Michael. And this might be a little bit of a leading hot or not, but hot or not, cyber liability insurance.
Oh, hot. Very hot.
Talk to us.
Very hot. I used to think that it was only large corporations that were vulnerable to cyber attacks. No way. I will tell you what, those calls just imagine the frequency of calls that you get from those robocallers. There's just that many times more that your identity online is being retrieved by somebody, right? Yeah. And so frankly, cyber attack is very hot. Everybody is exposed to it. And I can tell you right now, Dan, as you and I have seen, claims are coming in like crazy, and you can't afford to ignore it.
So I'm gonna throw something out that I've been asked these questions before. So somebody out there is listening to you, watching you, and saying, "Yeah, but Michael, I'm just a really small business. I've got 5 employees. I don't have anything that any of those cyber criminals want. Why would I spend my money on that?" How would you answer that?
Well, I'll say after a cyber attack, you will be even a smaller company.
Yeah. Good. Michael, the most recent one that I ran into was one that I'm sure you're familiar with, and I was not. And it was, I'm not sure if this goes under the category of ransomware, but it was a situation where they had gotten onto a professional colleague of mine's computer, and they didn't steal his data. They just encrypted it so that he couldn't get it.
That's right.
And so what the takeaway was, hey, listen, I'm not sure if this information is valuable to me or whether I could take it and use it and monetize it, but I sure as heck think it's valuable to you. and I'll bet you'll pay to get it back. And of course, once you encrypt something, good luck trying to get that. And so
That's right.
the ransom was in Bitcoin. It was unbelievable.
And we talked about modernizing the insurance world. In the past, when you purchased a policy, a cyber policy, what would happen is they would, again, paper, put it on the shelf, and when you had a claim, that was it. Today, the insurance companies, quite frankly, are monitoring your website. They're monitoring your login credentials. They're seeing how vulnerable. They're viewing your emails to see if you've been attacked. And so personally, that active monitoring that's happening right now in the insurance marketplace, you just can't afford to be without.
Yeah.
It's just prudent. You're a prudent business person by having it, plain and simple.
I have to think, and this is almost going to sound stupid, Michael, but you almost don't need to make that argument in today's day and age because there are so many high-profile cyber attacks with big companies. And to your point, this is happening all around us all the time. And what I've been blown away by is every time I take a moment to sort of read about some of these unscrupulous organizations out there, and they're that, right? It's no longer just some person, over in Eastern Europe who is sitting in a basement in a dungeon. These are just are incredible resources. They're huge organizations, multi-level organizations. Yes. With money and revenue. It's like a Fortune 500 company out to come after you.
100%. Absolutely true. I'm reading a book called Humility is the New Smart. A good Rotarian friend of mine, Dr. Phil Smiley, lent it to me. And I love it. It says on it, in the book, it says, old smart is the new stupid. Right?
Yeah.
So I said to him, define old. Because quite frankly, the information that you had maybe as short as 2 years ago is now old.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. And part of the challenges we've seen with insurance is they don't move that nimbly, and that's
they didn't used to. They didn't used to, Dan. As you and I both know now, they've learned their lesson.
They've learned their lesson.
Serve customers.
They have learned their lesson.
Hey, I want to make a quick shift on hot or not, if that's okay, to a personal insurance matter.
Sure.
Hot or not, Michael, personal umbrella policies.
Well, I will say that it is, if you can afford to have an umbrella policy, and I know how tough it is right now during COVID, and people are right now saving in every way, shape, or form they possibly can. Sometimes, when it is worthwhile to take a look, if you have younger individuals at home, if you're exposed or could possibly be vulnerable to a potential large loss, it is really important because, quite frankly, today, $1 million is nothing. It really isn't.
Right.
So I definitely recommend it.
And not expensive to get that $1 million. I mean, for the amount of coverage that you get, it's an easy choice. As we've talked to our clients, as insurance goes, it's an obvious choice, but not to everybody.
Eddie, 20 plus years ago, when you said to an underwriter, my client wants $1 million umbrella, they're like, $1 million? Why? Yeah. What do they do?
Today, right?
Right. Today, when you say $1 million, the underwriter says, that's it?
That's all you want. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and the reality is, Michael, and there's people who are listening to us, I would assume, that are CEOs and business owners and have a lot of assets.
Yes.
And the more you have, the more you're going to need. I don't know if you saw this morning. I know Tiger Woods is in a different stratosphere than most of them from a money standpoint, but he almost killed himself. He almost killed himself a few weeks ago, driving about 45 miles per hour over the speed limit. The reality is what if he had killed somebody else?
That's
right.
And so liability, and that could be your kid. That could be your 16-year-old kid driving.
Well, and by the way, I know that when he rolled a car over, from what I recall of the pictures, he actually hit a tree, right?
Yeah.
Well, similar incident, and actually we had a client that was speeding, and his driver hit a guardrail, okay? And you would be surprised to know, well, actually, Dan, you would know, and Andy, I'm sure you've heard this, but the city of Seattle sent him a bill for that guardrail.
Boy. Yeah.
And it was not cheap.
Yeah.
I will tell you that it's a good thing it was a commercial policy, and it's a good thing that it had $1 million plus an umbrella, but I was very, very surprised to see the dollar amount associated with the replacing of that guardrail.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've oftentimes heard it referred to as jury chum as well, to make sure that you have something, right? Because if somebody's going to come after you, right? This is the issue here. We live in a litigious society, and if somebody's going to come after you, it gives them low-hanging fruit, if you will, right?
That's
As
right.
opposed to coming after your personal assets, and from a protection standpoint, that might give them some peace of mind. But
That's right. Absolutely right. And it's, and today, again, with the technology that we have, it's really easy to find what somebody owns.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. I had a client that says, I have LifeLock. And I said, so do I. And he says, they can't get my information. And I just had to prove it to him how easy it was for me to. So I went on to the King County parcel viewer and I pulled up his name. I didn't need a passport. I didn't need anything. I showed him his signature. I said, is that it? He says, yeah. Just to show him how easy it was. I did a snippet of that signature. I said, there, I have your signature. Where do you want me to place it? His mouth dropped. He's looking at me. He says, you've got to be kidding me. It was that easy. I said, it's that easy.
Well, Michael, it's interesting because we were just talking in the opening about I got my vaccine today. You know what the new common thing is? Everybody's going. I posted a picture of my Band-Aid. Too many people are putting up their card though.
Yes,
their birth
with all
date.
of the
And
birth date and personal information.
So please get your vaccine. Yes, everybody go out, get your vaccine, but don't put your name and your birth date up there because people are they're now going in and they're copying that and they're figuring out a way to work that in. So it's really dangerous. Before we go to break, I know we're going to be coming up on it, Andy. Quick hot or not, Michael. You talked a lot about your work with clients. Hot or not, personal relationships with clients, or is it only business?
No, personal relationship for sure.
Why is that?
Well, when you're looking at someone, the insurance client, frankly, the risk management client, needs to be able to trust you and know that when they're sharing something with you in confidence, that they know who they're sharing it with. And so it is absolutely vital to know that you are the real deal, that you are what you say is, and you are going to keep things to yourself. There are many times that, frankly, the client says to me, look, I know that you and your wife work together and whatnot, but do me a favor, keep this to yourself. Happy to do it. And I always have. And what's interesting is that needs to be there. And that goes above a trust, that in my opinion, is a relationship that goes way beyond an advisor client. It is very personal. It's deeply personal. And so, yes.
It's almost, Michael, as if it's required on some level. You're going to have to know them on a personal level, right? And they're going to have to know you on a personal level to do business with you.
Well, and they have to know that you have their best interest at heart. They have to know it. And they're going to know that right away when you're talking to somebody. If the person is out to make a buck, and look, in this world, it's really easy to make a buck. And if the client is in a position to feel that that's all you're there for, they're going to quickly realize that and they're going to walk on and they're done. But if they know that you're there to ensure that their interests are protected, you win. They win. It's a win-win situation.
Yep, sounds great. Well, listen, we're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Michael Oskouian with First Underwriters, for our Plead the Fifth section of the show, we will ask this very question. Plead the Fifth, what's it like working with your spouse? And so we'll try not, we don't want to get you into too much trouble, but it's a relevant question, kind of given how you're set up, and a good opportunity to talk about the aforementioned head honcho. So don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
Excellent.
The Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by Whedon Unleashed. As a business owner, you don't have a professional life and a personal life. You have a life. And that life is full of opportunities and obstacles. Your business is a vehicle that fuels your life. If you run out of fuel because of a crisis, then your entire lifestyle is affected. Dan Whedon works with small and medium-sized business owners to ensure that no calamity is fatal. Dan focuses on accelerating business growth while at the same time planning and implementing strategies on preventing, mitigating, and recovering from those obstacles of business and life. Through Dan's consulting work with his partnership with First Underwriters Insurance to finance your risk, he'll make sure that you, with confidence, unleash the value of your business and lifestyle. To get a complimentary review of your situation, call Dan at 360-271-1592 or email him at dan@danwhedon.com. Tell Dan you heard him on the Seattle Shrimp Tank podcast and receive a 20% discount on any work that's agreed to. Be unleashed and be well.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from our virtual studio, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and second head honchos and business thought leaders all around Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I am Dan Whedon, taking the head seat as Brad Berger is on vacation, with my intrepid co-host today, Andy Vernon. You can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. For those of you watching in real time, thanks for joining our Facebook live stream. And please don't forget to rate and review us. For our next segment, it's Plead the Fifth, Andy.
Yeah. And you know how appropriate for this particular Plead the Fifth. But before we get into that, our Plead the Fifth, of course, segment is sponsored by Port Ludlow Resort, our shrimp peelers. And our Plead the Fifth today, Michael, is really we want to get some feedback from you about the challenges, if there are any. And I'm not saying there are, but some of the challenges with working with your spouse.
I love it. I love working with my spouse. I'll tell you what. So her and I are so different from and I gotta say, I don't know if you saw this recently or not on CNN. Brooke Baldwin, the anchor woman on CNN, she left saying that all of her supervisors, bosses, and whatnot are all men, and they think differently than women. And that is absolutely a true statement. Insurance has been, and for a long, long time, men dominant. And when my wife and I talked about this years past, and in fact, in 2015, she says, you know what, it's got to change. It has been too long. The more women are owners of businesses, they're coming out of the homes, they're making decisions, and she is absolutely vital at the head, because she thinks very differently than I do, and that's really better, quite frankly. I think Dan would agree with it as well.
Diversity in thought, for sure.
Well, Michael, I'm not going to be as kind as Andy. I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit on Plead the Fifth here.
Oh.
And we're going to stick on Kathy right here. Just a two-parter, Michael. And remember, you can only plead the fifth once.
Sure.
That's a two-parter. What is it that you do? What is it that you do that drives Kathy crazy at work?
What is it that I do that drive Kathy crazy? Everything.
Yeah. Give me what's the thing? If Kathy came on, what would she say? The one thing that you do that drives her crazy?
Well, I can't let go of something, and she can. And so what drives her crazy is I will stick to it until if we have talked about something and have concluded that it was a way to go. And if I didn't get it my way, I will keep asking and tweaking and asking the same question in different ways. And she'll say, stop. I answered it.
So now here's the second part of that. This is going to be more fun.
Okay.
What is it that she does that drives you crazy at work?
Oh, be careful here. This is the one you want to go to Plead the Fifth on, Michael.
Well, Kathy answers a question with a question. That's the part that drives me crazy.
There you go.
Honestly.
I knew
say
Michael
to her,
would...
I say, what do you think? And she says, what do you think I think? And I'm like, we just answer the question.
It's like an Abbott and Costello. Listen, I knew Michael wouldn't fair catch that one. I knew it.
Well, you know, Dan, can I just... We'll go back to some serious questions in a moment, but this is Plead the Fifth is always a good opportunity to ask a less serious question and learn a little bit more personally about Michael and potentially Kathy as well. And we like to ask Michael, what shows do you binge watch?
Oh my gosh. We got on any of those, the cyber, the Jack Ryans and things like that, where there's enough suspense action, but they're closer to reality than others. We like those shows very much so. We did actually binge watch Mandolin not that long ago, and it was fun. It was actually a lot of fun.
Yep. You mean the Mandalorian?
Mandalorian, not Mandolin. Yeah.
No,
I'm
not a huge Star Wars guy, so I'm like, Mandolin, I was like, that sounds close enough.
Mandalorian. That's right.
I'm with you. Yeah.
See, I didn't even know. Kathy says to me, it was so funny. She's like, how do you not like these space shows? I said, man, in the past, I would look at them and I go, come on, there's no way that would happen. But now I actually believe it will happen. So.
That's right.
Mandalorian. Thank you for that correction.
No, we knew exactly what you meant.
Hey,
Well-
Michael, Andy, I'm going to ask Michael a little bit of a serious question because I want people to know a little bit more about First Underwriters and why it's a little bit different. Now, Michael, I know you've talked about, the client service, but I'd like you to also share a little bit about how First Underwriters is structured. It's not your traditional building with a whole bunch of insurance agents and such. It's set up as a brokerage, and it's set up and you've set up a scenario where you may be able to bring in people from all over the area
right.
and all over the country. Talk a little bit about First Underwriters as an insurance brokerage opportunity for people.
That's right. We're an insurance marketplace, and we're
Yeah.
modernizing the way insurance is being offered. You know, insurance is such a small part of the risk management. And we say small, and people say, what do you mean by that? Well, risk management is really, if you do everything well and you've mitigated your risk, you really don't need insurance, because what you're saying essentially is that you've ensured that there is enough resources available for that loss, and you've prevented or controlled the losses so they don't even happen in the first place. So what our job is to ensure that we help the client figure that part out. Where will you be vulnerable? And can you mitigate that? Is there a way that we can transfer that loss, or is there a way that we can contractually transfer your exposure to someone else, or other mechanisms? And so once we've done that, then we see, okay, what little insurance or a lot of insurance, depending on that person's circumstance, do they need to protect themselves? First Underwriters becomes the marketplace of all of that. What we do is we're looking for talents in those specific industries, whatever the market they serve, right, or are passionate about. We're looking to place them in front of those type of clients, allowing them to offer the services of First Underwriters to their clients.
Perfect. Thank you.
Michael, in other words, this is, and maybe I misunderstood this as I was sort of trying to get my arms around your business, but it's really a multi-channel, right? You do some selling to individual business clients, but also have partners kind of out there telling your story, and help me better understand that.
You know, you asked earlier, it's so interesting that insurance clients, insurance is a people business.
Yeah.
It's a people business. You got to be able to ask somebody, and Dan and I do this frequently. It is about when we're sitting with a business owner, they are passionate and they know their business, whatever it is, making widgets, serving their clients, being a professional. They don't know where they're exposed, where they're meeting with their one person going to their work and doing their job. We're meeting with hundreds of the likes of them. Yeah. And we're seeing the best practice techniques in that industry. Yeah. So when we're sitting with the client and we're saying to them, look, you're doing this method, but what we've observed over the past 20 some odd years is these other methods are a better way to go. And so what we're helping them with is not just placing an insurance or risk policy or financing that risk, but rather being able to help show them how to run their business more effectively.
Your consultants, and it almost, what comes to mind, Michael, as you're kind of talking about that is, I'm going to butcher this quote from Donald Rumsfeld, but when he was back talking about the war in the Middle East, he was, well,
I love that.
Awesome. We know what we know what we don't know, but it's the things that we don't know that we're worried about. And that's where you can really bring expertise to a business, because you know that business because you've seen them before.
100%. You're absolutely right. That is, and I'm going to use that. And I love Donald Rumsfeld. He's a great guy.
You got to send him a quarter every time you use it.
Yeah, exactly. I will. He probably could use it in retirement.
I'm sure he could. I know.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, a recent example of that is when I met with a client of mine that owns a pretty good sizable transportation company, and he says, boy, it's kind of tough. Looking at more and more where our booking engine is online, our the HR manuals are online, our all of our payroll deduction and our payroll account, everything is online. And what I read through those contracts, and I showed him where the vulnerabilities were. He says, boy, I would have never thought that. Well, when you wouldn't get that. Even if you sat in front of an attorney would look at that contract, says, yeah, this is what you signed. So what do you want to know about it?
I mean, they don't know. See that differently.
That's right.
You've actually worked with somebody who experienced a potentially catastrophic loss to where you can identify that pitfall. That's just invaluable.
Well, and Andy, the lawyer is not there to write a check at the time of the loss.
Right. That's right.
You know,
That's
at the
right.
time of the loss, if you need their services, and look, we use them all the time, you're going to get a bill.
Yeah. But that's such a different perspective. Whereas you can really speak to, hey, I had this experience where this happened, and here, this is what that loss looked like. And just like you said, this business owner may say, I just never would have thought of that.
That's
but
right.
It's eyes beyond, their individual business to more of an industry view, if you will.
100%.
Yeah.
So Michael, it's hard to believe time just flies. I'm going to throw in one last hot or not, because I'm interested in your answer
Sure.
before we go off and go into the next segment of things. But listen, I should say this. I'm borrowing this question from Alan Alda. I listen to Alan Alda's podcast. He has a podcast called Clear and Vivid, and it's very science oriented. He brings in a lot of science people, human behavior, anthropologists. It's actually a very, very good podcast. And he asks a series of questions to everyone. And I just love this question. I'd like to hear your answer to it. So
Sure.
we'll consider it a hot or not. Let's say you're at a dinner party. And hopefully we'll be able to be going back to dinner parties again soon, but you're at a dinner party and you're
What's a dinner
seated
party?
next to someone you don't know. You don't know them at all. What do you
6 feet
say
apart,
to
though.
get? What do you
6 feet
say to get things started? To get to know them, to start a conversation.
But it really well, depending on the type of dinner party, and of course, are we guests of whom and our association with that person? That's typically how I would start it. I would ask the question as to how they ended up being in the same place as me there and their association with that individual. But I'm very interested. I mean, you can't be in this business as long as I have by not actually loving to get to know people and what their life journey has been like. It's fascinating to me, the places they've traveled and why, and what the places that they've lived and why. And it's interesting. That has always fascinated me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, listen, Michael, we want to thank you so much for coming on our program today. For our listeners that want to get in touch with you or learn more about you and First Underwriters, how can they get more information?
Well, we have firstunderwriters.com. That would be our website. Our phone number 425-242-5357. And that's our office line. My direct line is 425-296-9403. That is directly to me. And the email address for me is michaelo@firstunderwriters.com. You can shorten it, and that would be michaelo@STUW.com.
Well, Michael, thank you, brother. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate
pleasure.
you getting a little UW comment into there. I like that. I like how you shorten that. Thanks for being here, Andy Vernon. Thanks, pal. I appreciate you pinch hitting today. It's great to see you again.
It's always a pleasure, Dan. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Our next show from our virtual studios 2 weeks from today, Wednesday, April 21st. We're gonna have a special episode featuring Brad Berger. We've got some news that will be coming out of that. I will leave that for then, but we're gonna have a chance to talk about the last 5 years, just about, of Shrimp Tank with Brad, and so you're not gonna want to miss that. Make sure you check out all of the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. We're on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, all over the place. And we're going to try to do Brad justice here. And remember, to become a shark, we all start out as shrimps.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in a shrimp tank.